It's the other way around too. When the federal government violates the rights of the states, we should tell the federal government, stop. You don't have the right to do that. And that is what I'm saying. Like in the case of civil rights, of course, especially the southern states were violating rights. And that's why I think we should fight the civil rights, the civil war, and we should intervene to restore the civil rights of individuals because that's your federal right. But when the federal government pass a law where it even regulates the tomatoes that you grow in your backyard, and that's today the law, then the federal government is usurping the rights of free people to live in freedom. And that's why we have problems in the economy. It's because the government now decides winners and losers. If you are McDonald's, you get cozy with Obama or with Bush, and you get benefits. And that shouldn't happen in America. So I don't believe in welfare for the rich either. And that's the problem we have in America.
That's one of the problems that I have with a lot of conservative think tanks. They want to turn middle America that's really, the middle class has been shrinking. And it's not the government. It's, to me, there's stagnant wages and stuff like that. It's not because government's taxes are taking all their money. It's because the rich have said, all right, we got it, we're going to keep it, and we ain't trying to add anybody else. And once we get a new person, we're going to tell them the secret. Hey, don't bring nobody else with you. But what ended up happening is they'll say, it's all right to give billions of dollars to BP. It's all right to give all this money to Walmart and all these subsidies and everything else because they're job creators and all this other stuff. But Tanya right there, she's getting $100 a month of food stamps. That $100 is coming out of your pocket. No, those billions of dollars that are going to BP is coming out your pocket too.
Remember that I don't know.
So I agree with you there that you don't.
And we agree. And if there is a conservative that believes like that, that person doesn't understand conservatism, really. But there are liberals who believe in the same thing. Under liberal governments, the corporations are still in cozy with government. I don't think it's a problem of liberal conservative. It's a problem of common
money
sense.
And not having money.
Exactly.
Those that have and those that don't.
And we agree. The problem is that I don't see the government as the solution of these problems. For example, why can't we experiment in America with different things? Why don't allow the welfare state to change the way it is? Why don't we allow, for example, churches to help organizations and the government helps churches? Why don't we allow, like most African Americans, want vouchers so I can take my child to whatever school I want to take my child?
We got a few more seconds. We're going to pick up right there with choices and everything else. I'm enjoying the conversation. We're going to have you come on the show a few more times. But we'll be right back with CTV Politico. Stay tuned.
You ever wanted to know what's going on in and around your community? CommunityTV1.com is your answer. Go ahead, log on to www.communitytv1.com and get your info on.
Crystal Joy Sound System Rentals and Professional Recording Studio is at your service. In association with Community TV One, the only community-based multimedia studio. Crystal Joy offers professional subs, main tops, monitors, power amps, professional mics, and a full soundproof multi-room studio specializing in Christian singers, groups, and bands. If you are talented and think you've got what it takes, we're looking for you to join our record label, Crystal Joy Records. For more information, contact 239-771-2560.
The City of Fort Myers has supported new and early-stage businesses by providing a location and technical assistance to new business owners. Tenants also have access to free business consulting, professional receptionist office, free Wi-Fi, 2 conference rooms, a large training room, copier and fax. Many new businesses now operating successfully have had their start at the Southwest Florida Enterprise Center. If you have a business idea, call 239-321-7085 and come join us.
Welcome back to CTV Politico. I'm your host, Earl Sparrow, and we have in our studio tonight Mr. Ismael Hernandez. He's the director of the Freedom and Virtue Institute. And could you give us a little bit about, I know you worked with AFCAM for a little while, and how did you begin the Freedom and Virtue Institute, and tell us a little bit about it.
Well, yeah, absolutely. As I said in the beginning, I came from Puerto Rico as a communist. I had a transformation in my consciousness and began to change my views. And for 15 years, I worked for the Catholic Diocese of Venice in the AFCAM Catholic Center here in Dunbar. And after that time, I had an inkling in my heart that there was something wrong with the way I was approaching poverty. You know, what happens is that we give people stuff and more stuff and more stuff. We pay their bills and things don't change. And one day I'm sitting on my desk and I see the children of those I have been giving them stuff for many problem. And that's why I started the Freedom and Virtue Institute, to create a new vision of poverty alleviation in America. We have a training for churches where we help churches to learn what we call the 7 principles of effective compassion, using Christian principles and how Christians used to help the poor 100 years ago. When there was no government around to help anyone, we were helping each other. How can we recapture those principles and adapt them to the changing conditions of today? That's a training for churches. If you want to know about our training, we'll be more than glad to give you information. And we also have a program with children. It's called the Self-Reliance Club. 3 years ago, I went to this massive distribution of school supplies. And it was a mass of black and brown kids getting the free cheap stuff from a small cadre of white people. And I felt offended, really. Number one, what are the kids learning? They're learning that there is benefit at the end of the long lines of dependency. And why it is always us in the receiving end. I want to see ourselves in the giving end. And that will only happen when we discover economic initiative. You know? So the kids, we open savings accounts for the kids. The kids work in entrepreneurial initiatives in the schools. They earn money. We teach them economics. And at the end of the year, they have earned enough that they can buy the school supplies, their uniforms. They do it themselves. So that really highlights the dignity of the children. And they learn the connection between reward and accomplishment. And that is the connection that keeps people out of poverty. And I want to see a mass change in the way we look at the poor and we look at us as minorities. Conquering, not a story of victimization, you know. We were victims, but now we're conquerors. Let's focus on that part and forget about victimization. Victimization is the background, is not the storyline. The storyline is the beauty of a people who have conquered, who have survived, or who have grown. And let's learn from that history. And that is what we're trying to do with the Freedom and Virtue Institute.
I like that. I'm a member of Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity, and we do a shoe giveaway. My church, from time to time, we have a Christmas gift thing, and we have people lined up, shoes and book supplies and things of that nature. I'm a board member with the Dr. Piper Center, and we do the big Dr. Piper giveaway on Christmas. And there are pretty much, especially around the school giveaway, Cornerstone's doing it here, Mount Hermon's doing it here, Mount Olive's doing it here, and this other church is doing it here. And then people will get hit this one, and this one, hit all 4 of them. Shoes, they'll come back, and then they'll come back with a grandchild or something like that, and I'm like, well, I'm sorry. That bothers me. That people have, I don't want to call it greed, but you know, if you have 4 sets. There's somebody that doesn't have any. And how could you sleep at night saying, oh, they should have been in line, or they knew it was coming up, or something like that? That's not the way. And the kids are going to pick up. I do agree with that. The only thing I don't agree with is that the victimization thing. I think forgetting about it and moving on. There's a lot of people that think racism is dead. And racism ended in 1964 when the Civil Rights Act was done. And so why are you complaining about that back in the past and everything else like that? That was way back then. Why are you talking about old ancient history with slavery? That was hundreds and hundreds of years ago and everything else. I think you have to understand what happened. You have to appreciate what happened. Make sure it doesn't happen. If you don't learn the lessons from the past, you're going to repeat. You're going to take the test again. But I think for all intents and purposes, our people have been free and able to, without being terrorized, burned, and run out of town, to establish the businesses only for maybe 40 years, 40, 50 years. I'm born and raised in St. Augustine, Florida, and they're told about people that were entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs in my city. They got run out of town because they were empowering people and getting people to think. So it's really it's not fair to say let's get started from scratch. And I know that was in the past, but I'm sorry if my mom and dad didn't graduate from high school because their mom and dad didn't graduate from high school. I'm the first person to graduate from high school, and now I'm on equal footings with the peers and everybody else. I think we have to work on making sure we get say there are things in the past, there are steps we need to do to get there, but we're not there yet, and here's how we're going to get there. Not say, well, it's in the past. Well, let's build ourselves up from there. Yeah. How?
I think that there are 2 extremes that we need to avoid. One is the one you described, that racism doesn't exist. You know? And the other is that racism is so pervasive that it impedes black progress. Those 2 are extremes that need to be avoided. It's false that racism doesn't exist. We all have experienced it. The human heart is sinful, so racism will always be with us. Black and white racists. You know, yes. I believe that happens both ways, but especially against minorities. It happens. Now, it is the kind of racism that could impede you from accomplishing your dreams, surviving, no more than surviving, but conquering those obstacles and be successful in this society. There's so many examples of African American or Hispanic people in this country who have been so successful. For that to be a lie, it's not true. The problem is that when we focus too much on the obstacle, is when you're running a race. You look too much at the obstacle, you're going to fall. Okay. We had to have the context of victimization as the backdrop of the story, not as the storyline. And that's the problem. We had that tendency of make our storyline the line of victimization. There are 2 kinds of victimization. Victimization as a reality, as a fact. We were victimized. But there's also victimization as an identity. And that's the one we have to be very careful, because it is the inclination of the heart is very, very subtly. It's easy to find an alibi in life. My mother did this. My father did this. My teacher looked at me the wrong way. So-and-so 20 years ago, they did this to me, so I have a rotten life today. Mm-hmm. So we should not be naive to think that racism doesn't exist. And at the same time, we should not be so distrusting of ourselves to think that we are not strong enough to conquer it today. I believe we are.
I think there's two different sets of racism. There's the I don't like black people or I don't like white people kind of thing like that. Sure. But then there's the systematic things that are in place that I'll give you an example. Specifically in Ferguson, there was they did a lot of looking at the governance system there. They had cities where speed traps, somebody can get a speeding ticket or something like that, not show up for court for that speeding ticket. Now they got a warrant out for their arrest. Now they're arrested. Now they lost a job. Now they have a record. You know, it was primarily out of I would say it was about 86% of the people that were in these courts for these minor fines that turned into warrants, that turned into arrests, were African American. And there are, I'll tell you an example. I got pulled over earlier this year. I ended up getting the judge ended up waiving the ticket just this morning. But I still had to pay a $25 fine because my license was suspended and I didn't know it. But the guy followed. But it's simple stuff like that that's still going on. And you said were, and it was a thing that happened in the past, and it's still going on today. And we should be still fighting. We should still be highlighting those places where this is the way it was. I know y'all used to get away with this, but that's not the way it is now. And more people should be, of all colors, say this is not right. Stop doing it.
I'm not going to say that structural racism doesn't exist. I don't think it's as pervasive as others believe. We don't have the time to discuss that Ferguson study. I have my opinions about the accuracy of that second part of the study. I don't think it's as accurate when you study the data carefully. But I'm not going to deny that that happens in America because obviously it does happen. But still I insist. This country has opened up enough for us to focus on ourselves, and in spite of the obstacles, we can conquer. And that is the difference between, for example, Booker T. Washington's ideas and Du Bois' ideas. I believe that this is the time now of Booker T. Washington, that he told us we had two problems: white racism and black underdevelopment. We have focused too much on one of those items. It's time to focus on the second one, on our own development.
I'm very familiar with Talented 10th and the Booker T. Washington thing about it. The problem with that, I'm pretty sure you're familiar with the Black Wall Street, Tulsa, Oklahoma story. Sure. Blacks were doing their own. They had hospitals. They had everything else. Guess what? They got bombed. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it can be done. Dunbar community, other African American communities had businesses, black businesses lined up down the street. Anderson Avenue is what they called it before they turned it into Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Street. But the question is how. I mean, and the system and the facts are right there. Black kids are getting suspended more often for lesser things. ALC, I mentored there. They're nothing but us generally there for any and every little thing. So there's still some things that the ACLU and the NAACP is looking at stats like why are black kids populating ALC and for the same offense that other people are doing that might get. I was a teacher, and you were a teacher too. A girl was very disrespectful to me, white girl, and she went to her principal. I'm thinking she's gonna get suspended for ISS. 5 minutes later, she was back in my classroom, and I'm looking like, what is this? You know, but then I would have sent another black kid out. He would have been probably suspended for a day or two. So I'm saying what I saw in my class. I'm like, why don't this assistant principal get everybody a pass and say he was just mad? So there are some things that are still going on.
Absolutely. We have to
in
be
the school
careful
system
with
too.
We're not making it, going from the particular to the general. You know, I had a situation and that then demonstrates the general trend. We have to be careful because.
But the stats are the stats. And you look at the stats.
We need to look
African
at
Americans are penalized harder and longer.
You know what I am more concerned is with the problems of the black family, the problems of truancy, the problems of violence, the problems of kids going to ALC because they really should be there. The reality is that many of our children should be there, and why are we having those problems? The problem is that we focus too much on the external constraints against our advancement, and less on the internal constraints that we place on ourselves. And you see that every time that we have a situation that white men did to us, the reaction to that is so overwhelming. But when we have community problems that are internal, the reaction is not as alarming. It should be more alarming, and we will see a change. If we will focus internally on our strengths, on our weaknesses, and begin to focus on ourselves in spite of that, my point is that the society has opened enough, even with all the constraints that you mentioned, that we can take care of ourselves and progress in spite of the present situation of racism. But we continue to be focused on those external constraints in an inordinate way. So the pendulum, if race consciousness fell from exclusion because of race, evil exclusion because of race, into inclusion because of race. And what I say is enough of race. That's what I mean. Enough of it. Let's look at ourselves and our strengths. You know what is the strength that characterizes African Americans? It's not the color of African Americans. It's not their race. It's the strength of heart that they demonstrated through centuries of oppression. Let's focus on that strength instead of focusing on the chains of oppression against us. And when we change our mindset, we will begin to see solutions in spite of the present problems, even though they exist. And that is the problem I see, that we focus too much on the obstacles that are still in front of us, and less on our own strengths to overcome them. And that's what I'm trying to do with the Freedom and Virtue Institute, to focus on our strengths, not on the weaknesses of the other. That's basically what I'm...
Well, I agree that during the controversy with Freddie Gray and Mike Brown and other instances where a white police officer, where it was more blacks than whites that were involved in Freddie Gray's situation in Baltimore, Maryland, but the outcry, and you saw it on social media just like everybody else did. Like, why aren't people so upset about black-on-black crime as they are police brutality on this one guy that might have been a thug or a criminal anyway? You just glamorizing the thug lifestyle and all that. Thug's the new N-word nowadays. Whether you admit it, that it is. I can't say the N-word, but I can say thug. But you know who I'm talking about.
I don't agree with that. I think that when you see a thug, you know a thug, regardless of the skin color.
I'm talking about the media. I'm talking about media. I'm talking about media. I'm talking about those bikers that killed each other, those 9 people in 18 and everything else. I was looking. I watched Fox News. They're gonna say the thug word. What they thug. They ain't even talking about it. They're talking about ISIS. You know what I mean? So it has turned into that. But I appreciate you coming on the show. We have so much more we can talk about. We're gonna have to have you come back because we talked about the duality with freedom and what role of the government to do that. But then we didn't get to talk about freedom to marry who you want, freedom to do what you want, body, to find and marry. Those other things like that. We don't want the government to do anything. But we're going to give, is anything else you want to have in the last word?
First of all, to thank you for this lovely conversation. I really enjoyed it, for your kindness in inviting me. And if anyone wants to know more about the Freedom and Virtue Institute, to go to our website in www.fvinstitute.org. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's going to wrap up our show for this week, and we'll see you sooner than later. Have a great evening.